Evening, everybody, and welcome along to this edition of Heroes and Icons on their media with myself, Pat Barry, and we're on Series 2, Episode 4 of Heroes and Icons, and we have an email for all your suggestions or comments. It's info@theirmedia.tv, and all our programs can be found on our YouTube channel, which is Their Media TV. And as you can see there from the collage behind me, the subject of this edition of Series 2, Episode 4 is Max Schmeling, world heavyweight boxing champion from 1930 to 1932. I'll check that later on in the program. I think that's when he reigned as world heavyweight boxing champion. But he was much more than that. He was an icon as well of the 20th century. Maximilian Adolf Otto Siegfried Schmeling, that's a long name, it's a mouthful, was born on September the 28th, 1905, and he passed away in February 2005 at 99 and a half. There you go. He was heavyweight champion of the world. He's two fights with Joe Louis, or Joe Louis, as some people call him. I call him Joe Louis. Became worldwide cultural events because of their national association at the time, because the Nazis were coming to power, or were making waves and all of that in Germany. And of course, Joe Louis was an icon in America and an idol as well, and a fantastic fighter. And of course, was good versus evil. They boiled it down to that. That was the media, I'm saying, at the time. They were the same in any year, It wasn't quite like that, And Max Schmeling got very bad press at the time, but really, when you're looking back over his career, he was never a member of the Nazi Party. He never supported Hitler. But the invidious position that he was in as an athlete, and a prominent athlete, was that he got his photograph taken by, well, Hitler, after all, was Chancellor of Germany, that's a historical fact. So, obviously you take a photograph taken, but really, he was much more than that. And he began his pro career in 1924 and in Germany, and he went to the United States in 1928, trying to further his career, really. And he had a 9th round KO of Johnny Risco. Now, for people who want to look up this stuff, I cannot go into every boxer that he fought, but Johnny Risco was a well-known, he was a contender and a very, very competent and fantastic fighter. But Johnny Risco, just sensational when Max Schmeling knocked him out in the 9th round, and he became an overnight sensation, so to speak. But anyway, that was our Max at the time, Max Schmeling there. And as I said, he did fight. He did. I suppose at the time you had a lot of up-and-coming boxers. You had Joe Louis himself. You had Jack Sharkey. You had the man himself, what was his name? James J. Braddock. And there was a film made on James J. Braddock as well, which was called Cinderella Man, which is a fantastic film, lads. If you ever get a chance to have a look at it, the Cinderella Man, James J. Braddock, a great character, of course, Irish American. And of course, then he became the first boxer to win the heavyweight championship by disqualification in 1930, when his opponent Jack Sharkey knocked him down with a low blow in the 4th round, mind you. So there you go. And Schmeling retained his crown successfully in 1931 by a TKO victory over young Stribling, who was no mean fighter himself at the time. A rematch in 1932 with Sharkey saw the American gaining the title from Schmeling by a split decision over 15 rounds. Now, there was many split decisions and hearing decisions in boxing. It's still continuing today, which is unfortunate, but anyway, that's the reality of the sport. But in 1933, Max Schmeling lost to Max Speyer by a 10th round technical knockout. He couldn't continue, really. And the loss then left some people believing that Max's career was past his prime. This is 1933, and he was only 28, 29 times. So meanwhile, in the meanwhile, while he was doing that, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party took over Germany at that time, but he never joined the Nazi Party. And really, I mean, as I said, he was in an invidious position, and some people came to view him as a Nazi puppet, which is desperately unfair if you read the man's life, desperately unfair. Now, that same year, he married well-known Czech film actress Annie Ondra, what's her name, you know, and they were married, they were together till she passed away I think in 1987. Anyway, 1936, just later on in the fight, Schmeling then knocked out Joe Louis, placing him as the #1 contender for the Jim Braddock title. So that was a sensation, because I think Schmeling was 10 or 12 or something like a huge odds to beat Joe Louis, because he was any boxer that Joe Louis fought at the time, he absolutely annihilated him. And it was a sensation for Schmeling to knock out Joe Louis at the time, which, as I said, in the right order of things, he then became the #1 contender to fight Braddock for the title. But Louis then got the fight, and Joe Louis, he knocked Braddock out to win the title in 1937. Schmeling finally got a chance to regain the title in 1938 in the rematch with Joe Louis, 1938. So, I mean, really, I think myself that in retrospect, looking back at those fights, I was looking at some of the black and white, I suppose, footage of them. I mean, Schmeling was good. I mean, different times, boxers tended to stand a lot, you know, not move around a whole lot around the ring, and just pure brute force won out in the end, and no mean skill, of course, as well. Anyway, Joe Louis won the fight in the first round by taking a knockout, because really Schmeling was in no condition to carry on, and really I think they did the right thing. Now, during World War II, of course, he was drafted into the German Air Force, and he was an elite paratrooper. But after the war was over, Schmeling himself, he mounted a comeback, but then eventually he retired permanently in 1948. Now, after retiring from boxing, Max Schmeling himself worked for the Coca-Cola company and became one of the, I suppose, the brand of that Coca-Cola company. He became partnership with them for that part of the world. He became very wealthy man. And obviously, going back to the time, when he was in America, and he was getting very, very bad press from sections of the media, not all sections of the media, but from some sections of the media. He was getting very, very bad press. And Schmeling himself, I mean, really and truly, in later on in interviews he did, it was quite obvious that the man had no truck at all with the Nazi Party, or with all things that the Nazi Party stood for. Max Schmeling usually have it that he was a willing model for Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich, the self-proclaimed Aryan Superman, as he was described in press in Germany. Schmeling may indeed have lunched in here with Hitler and had lengthy conversations with Goebbels, the master propagandist of the Nazi regime, but his tale is far, far, far more complex than that. The story of Max Schmeling, in my opinion, is the story of a hero who, during the Kristallnacht pogrom in November 1938, saved the lives of 2 young Jewish brothers named Levin, a decent man in conflict with the Nazi regime and the racial policies of Hitler's Third Reich, and a man who demonstrated extraordinary generosity, righteousness, and humanitarianism. Yet, Schmeling himself never once revealed his heroism. Max Schmeling was a shy man of extremely humble origins. who came of age amidst the glitter and turbulence of Berlin's golden 20s. As the heavyweight champion of Europe, his career eventually brought him to America. And when he arrived in New York, he won the world title, as we said, after victories over Johnny Wisco and Jack Sharkey in 1930. He defended it the next year, but lost to Sharkey in 1932 in a blatant, in my opinion, I saw the fight. Not at the time it happened, I saw the fight on newsreel, a blatantly unfair decision. And 4 years later, he was imported as a sacrificial lamb for the invincible Joe Louis. Although 10-1 underdog, Max Schmeling scored what some consider the upset of the century. I remember my dad talking about it when I was a little boy growing up, talking about all the upsets in boxing. That, in his mind as well, was one of the biggest, certainly in this century. Anyway. But as we said before, Joe Louis won the rematch in 1938. And also one of the briefest heavyweight fights of all time. And the fight was portrayed in the media as the battle of the Aryan versus the black, a struggle of evil against good, which was desperately unfair to both protagonists. But that's the way it goes in media, and you have to send newspapers to see. In a 1975 interview, before I'll mention it, Schmeling recalled the defeat, and he said, looking back at his defeat that time, he said, "I'm almost happy I lost the fight." He said, "Just imagine in 1938, if I would have come back to Germany as the world heavyweight champion after beating the American Joe Louis." I mean, obviously, he said, I never had anything to do with the Nazis, but he said, can you imagine? They probably would have insisted on all the pomp and pageantry and give him a medal of some sort. And then, of course, after the war, he could have been perceived as a war criminal if that had happened to him, as he said himself, And then, as we all know, the 1936 Olympics were held in Germany. And Max Schmeling went to Hitler and got a promise from Hitler that and of course, Schmeling knew some of them, all the US athletes would be protected. On several occasions, Hitler tried to cajole the respected boxer into joining the Nazi Party, but Schmeling vigorously refused ever to join the Nazi Party or to publicize the Nazi propaganda lines. And then, over Goebbels' personal protest, he refused to stop associating with German Jews. And of course, as you know, if people know the history of Max Schmeling, they know that his long-time manager was an American Jew. George Jacobs, the wonderful George Jacobs, was an American Jew, and he was Max Schmeling's manager throughout his professional career. And I suppose in an article published in History Today, two professors from the University of Rhode Island, named by Robert Wiesbord and Norbert Heitrich, tell how Schmeling agreed to hide the two teenage sons of a Jewish friend of his, David Lewin, during the awful time of Kristallnacht, November 1938, when the Nazi pogroms against the Jews reached new heights. He kept the two Lewin boys, Henry and Werner, in his apartment at the Excelsior Hotel in Berlin, leaving word at the desk that he was ill and no one was to visit him. Later, when the rage of hate died down a little bit, Schmeling helped them flee the country to safety. They escaped and went to the United States, where one of them, Henry Lewin, became a prominent hotel owner. The episode remained under shroud until 1989, when Henry Lewin invited Schmeling to Las Vegas to thank him for saving his life. To this day, Henry Lewin believes that he and his brother owe their lives to Max Schmeling, and he is convinced that Schmeling himself could have died for his humanitarian gesture. Heroes and Icons is the program here on Near Media. Tell all your friends about us. We have an email, info@nearmedia.tv, and this is Series 2, Episode 4, with the wonderful Max Schmeling. Hitler never forgave Schmeling for refusing to join the Nazi Party, So then what did he do? He had him drafted into the paratroops and he was sent on suicide missions, but he survived anyway, as the man says. And after World War II, Schmeling fought 5 times, I think, though he never made the top 10 anymore. He made enough money to purchase the fledgling Coca-Cola dealership. He was known as one of the most generous philanthropists in Germany. Schmeling treasured camaraderie and friendship, and somehow each of his ring opponents became his friend. He regularly and quietly gave the down and out Joe Louis gifts of money, and the friendship continued after Joe Louis's death. Schmeling paid for his funeral. Max Schmeling died on February 2nd, 2005, at the age of 99 at his home in Hollandstad. Schmeling became one of Germany's most revered sports figures, not only for his singular athletic accomplishment in the 1930s, but for his humility, discipline, and character. And I suppose, there have been many world champions, and of course, it's the story of boxing. Really, the story of boxing in the early years was the exploitation of the boxer by unscrupulous managers and all of that. And they found after their sweat and toil and all their boxing matches and into old age that they had nothing left. There was no money in the kitty. And so, but in Max Schmeling's case, he had a wonderful life. And as I say, he married his wife and Annie Odra, the Czech-born actress, and he had got the franchise for Coca-Cola, which kept him a fantastic life he had. And his wife of 54 years, the Czech-born actress Annie Odra, I'm just reading it there, died in 1987. In 1992, Max Schmeling himself was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. He lived his remaining years as a wealthy man and avid boxing fan, as I said, and he passed away on the 2nd of February 2005 at the age of 99 and a half. And in 2010, a bronze statue of Max was erected in Hollandstad. And so he was the German light heavyweight champion from 26 to 28, the European light heavyweight champion from 1927 to 1928, the German heavyweight champion in 1928, world heavyweight champion from 1930 to 1932, and European heavyweight champion 39 to 1939 to 1943. There's an American-German film made in 2002 simply titled Joe and Max, and it tells the enduring story of Max Schmeling and Joe Louis. And Schmeling, he lived in, when I say, he pops up, there's a reference in season 9 and 10 if people listen Law and Order and all of that. But I'm reading, I was looking up this during the week and looking up about Max Schmeling, and as I said, he got terrible press during his time as a boxer. But as you can see behind me there, he was a handsome man, big, strong, athletic man. I think it stood to him well, it stood him well, and his honesty, his humanitarianism, his the fact that he would not be usurped or used by the Nazi regime in Germany, which was not an easy thing to do when you consider the times that he lived in. But there you go. This is the episode 4, season 2 of Heroes and Icons with myself, Matt Barry, and our media, and all our programs will be up on our YouTube channel. But from this edition of Heroes and Icons and myself, Matt Barry, until we meet again, take care and God bless.